Okay.
Oh, Gary doesn't have the question?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna send you an email.
I just sent you mine privately on the chat. I already sent mine on Divine. Oh, you can send them though, whatever.
Check your email, Gary.
Good.
Yep.
Good. All right. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to The Perspective of Black Men. This is a podcast highlighting the American experience through a Black lens. Today, we will be covering equity in sports. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Dr. Kellen Scantlebury. I'm here joined by
Coach Smith.
and
Dr. Aaron Johnson.
And we have a special guest on tonight by the name of Gary Charles. Gary, do you mind introducing yourself to the people out there?
How you doing, Gary Charles? Do you want me to get into it or just say my name? I always like to ask people that because I never know how far they want me to go because my history is too large.
Give us a brief description and we'll dive really deep into some specifics later.
Absolutely. I worked on Wall Street for over 20-something years, but I guess my claim to fame is the fact that I started out the grassroots basketball program at Long Island Panthers, which in turn became the New York Panthers. And I've had the opportunity to coach over 20 pros out of the program, including Lamar Odom, Speedy Claxton, Danny Green, who just won his third championship, the Lance Stevenson, the Sebastian Telfair, the Joakim Noah, and on and on and on. So, and I was also associate director at ABCD camp, and I was instrumental in setting up that matchup of LeBron James and versus Leonard Cook, and other matchups throughout the years at ABCD. So those are some of the things that I've done. And lately, I created the Las Vegas Fab 48 tournament, but in the past 2 years, I changed it to the Las Vegas Big Time tournament because in the early 90s, when Kobe Bryant and LeBron and Melo and people like that were playing, that's what the tournament was called. And it's gotten to a point in which we get 1,000 teams from across the country and the world.
And you were recently acknowledged by ESPN as one of the top 100 influential people in college basketball. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
Really big accomplishment. We are excited, more than excited to have you on the show today. You and Divine are really close. You've been a mentor to Divine over the years. So we're really excited to dive into the topic of equity in sports. But before we get to that, I know you said that you worked on Wall Street. Just wanted to ask a little bit about what was your specific role? What made you want to pursue a career getting into finance? Because I think that is something that is not typical for Black men. So I think it would be something for young Black men and women to understand a little bit of your perspective and what made you choose that career path.
Absolutely. So first of all, let me just say this. I wasn't even on the finance side. I was on the computer side. I was systems programmer. But I went to Cheney State, which is an HBC school. It's now called Cheney U. And a point of fact is that when I was there, Coach John Cheney from Temple was the men's coach. And Coach Vivian Stringer, who's now at Rutgers, was the woman coach. And first I went there, I think I was going to do accounting. But my father called me. My father said, you need to get on the computer side because that's where the money's going to be at. And I think that the thing that I learned about that is that as Blacks, we don't do enough of that in pointing our kids in the right directions or what the future can look like, okay? Because without him saying that to me, I'm not sure which route I was going to end up. And for the record, I hated computers. I didn't want to get into it because especially back then, it was mostly geeks. If you go back in time, you will see, and even probably now, it's mostly geeks that get into that. So I'm sitting there thinking, Dad, you want me, Gary Charles, to get into that geek world of computers. But he said the magic word that I never forgot. And he said, you're going to make a lot of money going into that. That's what I needed. And the thing was that my dad, was my hero. And you hear that term a lot. Who's your hero? Who's this, whatever. Well, that was my hero, my dad. My dad was also one of the first Black men who worked for IBM, or he went into that world. So he opened up that door for us, so to speak. I have 3 brothers. We all are in the computer field. So that was the reason why I went there, and I became a systems programmer out there on, on Wall Street. And for those who don't know what that is, I was a person responsible for the system on the software end, the internal side of it. Or if someone wrote a program, their program didn't work, then they would call me, hey, Gary, it's not working. What do you think I'm doing wrong? I would try to help them. And I would tune the system, make sure it was, humming properly the way it was. Not hardware, software. So that was my job back then.
And I love to hear that every time we start talking to guests about their foundation, it really, really kind of bleeds through the different people who inspire them. Like it's so easily recognizable that you said, my dad was my hero. He was in computers. I went into computers, and he also influenced me because he said that's where the money was at. And it's just like, I'm so interested to know, because in our community, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of those examples. How is it that you believe, or I should say, do you have a connection to the community in that way, and that you believe yourself to be an example for people who come into your midst, who, not only your own immediate family, but also folks who you have mentored for so long?
Absolutely. Let me just say this. I grew up in Roosevelt, Long Island, 1 square mile. I grew up with Eddie Murphy, Chuck D for Public Enemy, Steve Mills, who was just recently president of the New York Knicks. In Roosevelt, you kind of knew everyone. If you didn't know them, you knew of them, so to speak. These were the days you rode your bike to the park or you walked to the park, but hey, it was a tight-knit family. But what I loved about Roosevelt is that old saying, it takes a village. To this day, there's a woman that lives across the street from my mom. My mom's been there since, 1972. We have been there. And Mrs. Buck. And Mrs. Buck, if she thought we were doing something wrong, she would let us know. I cannot tell you how many times I would hear from Mrs. Buck, and my parents would wait, Gary, what your boys doing over there? Okay, nothing, Mrs. Buck, nothing. But you know what I've learned? Thank you, Mrs. Buck, because she helped keep us in line. And I've come to realize that, wow, that's the meaning of it takes a village. We also had the community guys who kept us in sports. Mr. Jim Simpson was a major person in my life, because on the traveling team, I played basketball. We traveled with Mr. Simpson. Football team, he was my coach. Baseball, he was my coach. So he was my coach for a whole lot of things. And to be quite honest with you, when I graduated out of college, he was one of the people who said, Gary, we need you. And how could I say no to him? And it's because of him that I ended up with my basketball program, which led me to where I'm at today. So I want to thank him for that.
It's like an intrinsic motivation to pay it forward. I like that. And by the way, our connection here, my aunt taught in the Roosevelt Public Schools for like 35 years.
Oh, wow.
Mary Portis.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay.
Interesting that we have that little Roosevelt connection there.
Gary, so obviously I have a personal relationship with you since I was, a junior in high school. And, I've worked for you as one of your coaches. I've been an administrator for you with the New York Panthers. I've been head of security at one of your locations. Shoot, you had me in Vegas for 3 weeks one year. And, that was the year I actually was able to escort LeBron James into the gymnasium to watch a kid play and escort him back to his car. I was able to have a conversation with him. And James Harden was also in the gym at the same time. I'm in there going like crazy, like, am I going to be able to keep this place under control? But, personally, we talk about the community and about how it takes a village. And, I grew up in Harlem. And when I moved to Long Island, we moved in with my grandfather, and I was already in the single parent situation. And so playing with you during the summer during the AAU season was my opportunity to actually showcase, my talent, because Kopech wasn't giving us those opportunities. So, I get a scholarship to Bridgeport University because of you, because of the time that you dedicated when you didn't have to, but because you wanted to make sure that you could help young people get out of the neighborhood and do something better for themselves, and then come back and give back like you did. So I'm appreciative of the foundation of how that started for me. But, give the panel some, a little bit of you getting involved with grassroots basketball and what that means to you and the impact that you had in basketball, because it's documented with you being on the top 100 influential people in basketball. And one other thing I'll say, when I coached for you, and I'll be quick with this, I remember driving your car back from Philly from a tournament. We had a tournament, and it was a 3-hour drive, and your phone didn't stop ringing. I mean, literally for 3 hours, you answered the phone call of one college basketball coach after another for 3 hours. That's a fact. I was in the car with you. So I know the extent of what you mean in the world of grassroots basketball. So just give us how you got involved and the difference that you made and the impact that you've had.
Well, first of all, let me just say this. Listening to you just now, I realized, like, wow, I've done a lot for that guy. Where's my money, man? All right.
Yes, it has. He's like, you owe me.
Yeah, you know what? As I was saying, guys, Coach Jim Simpson, when I came back, the OGs, as we always call them, right? They approached me and they said, "Hey, Gary, look, we're getting on with age. We need more young people to get involved. Can you please get involved?" How could I say no? These were the guys that took me to trips to Louisiana, upstate, places like that, places that maybe I never would have been at. And I remember what it did for me. And these were at the time in which where you went into other people's home. We took you in. We didn't stay at hotels. Other people took you in. And first time I ever rode a horse was through some of these families and different things like that. Those things stuck with me no matter where I went, what I've done, and even to this day. So I felt I had owed those gentlemen to go ahead and create something in Roosevelt. So I started out by gathering 200 kids in Roosevelt and ran a little basketball league for them. And I got a couple of my friends involved, like Divine, as you know, Rod Barnes was one of my closest friends. And we started to do the league. Within that league, I thought that, you know what, let me create an all-star team. And I created an all-star team from those kids. And I said to myself, as a reward, I would take them on a trip or two, just like Coach Simpson used to take us. And I took them to Delaware. I took them to Jersey, to the Little Lad, and things like that. But going there, I started to see a bigger picture out there. And I saw some big-time players. I remember this kid scored 40 points on us. And turned out the kid was a kid by the name of Travis Best, who played in the NBA for years. But at that time, man, I was like, what? Who's this kid? And then the next time, I saw a young man playing another tournament. And the young man walked like a pro. He acted like a pro. He was carrying the ball in a bag. But everything about him, I'm like, this kid, he's got this like everything swag. That's what it was. He had the swag. So I decided to sit there and watch him play. So I hung around. The kid turned out to be Stephon Marbury. And at the time, maybe he was 12 or 13 years old. So I started to realize that, wow, we need to step up our games. And then the next year I saw other guys play And there was a kid who I said, there's no way this kid should be playing against these kids. That's a grown man playing, okay? And the tournament director, his name was Jim Dooley out of Delaware. We were playing at Delaware, University of Delaware. He said, no, that's Luther Wright. Luther Wright was 6'11", about 280 pounds. I think he was 16, at the time. I was like, what? So now I knew what I needed to do. So I went back to Long Island and I said, I'm going to give some of these kids an opportunity to get a scholarship, okay? And I started grabbing some of the better players together and make it happen. In that process, I meet a young man by the name of Zenit Hamilton, and I met him through a kid named Derek Brown, who ended up going to St. John. But Derek lived in his neighborhood, and he told me about Zenit, who was like in 8th grade. But he was an 8th grader who was like 6'10" already. And through the relationship I had with him, I meet Sonny Vaccaro. Because at the time, Zenit was like a top 5 in the country, along with Felipe Lopez, Allen Iverson, Antoine Walkers, guys like that. And Sonny asked me to come and meet him at the Final Four in Minnesota. So I did. I went out there. First time I went out there, I walk into the hotel, and it's just like a meat market at the hotel because every college coach in America is in the lobby. I could not believe it. But what I couldn't believe, I saw a head in the crowd. Maybe the biggest head I ever seen in my life. It was just like, wow. That head turned out to be John Thompson. Okay. And live and in color. And but Sonny asked me to come upstairs using his room, and we talked. And he asked me to get involved with him, and he just loved my swag. And he said, I'm going to sign you as my first team, my first grassroots program. And I need you to bring me other programs. And I did. I bought him other programs. But it's one of the things he said to me, I need to sign the next Michael Jordan. That's why I'm starting at the grassroots level. I need to have a relationship with these young kids at an early age. I said, fine. And we did. We ended up signing a young man at an early age out of high school. His name turned out to be Kobe Bryant. And in Kobe, every time I watched him play, I was like, oh my God. And I went to Sonny and I said, Sonny, I know everyone thinks Felipe Lopez is that next guy. I'm not saying he's not. But there's a kid named Kobe Bryant. That's the kid. And he said, Joe Bryant's son? I said, yeah. He said, oh my God, Joe played for me in the Dapper Dan All-Star game in the 70s. I said, well, his son is the one. Now, everyone might think that's a no-brainer. It wasn't a no-brainer back then. People weren't coming out of high school. Kevin Garnett had done it, but he was 6'10", 6'11". No 6'5", 6'6" kids that ever done it. And I was putting everything on Kobe becoming that person. And because Kobe became that person, Nike felt obligated that how did we miss out on this one? And people had to tell them about me. So Nike then turned around and created their grassroots division. And then obviously the other shoe companies created their grassroots division. So people owe a lot to Kobe, myself, Sonny, for having that vision to be able to make that happen. I'm not bragging. I'm just giving you facts, okay? Because there's a whole lot of revisionist history out there. And until I'm dead, I'm not trying to hear this revisionist, history, okay? I'm going to tell you how it was like. And remember, guys, this was before a cell phone. That was me driving back and forth to Philly. That was Joe driving back and forth to Long Island. Because back then, fellas, if you didn't get the person when they were at home, you just didn't get them. All right. So in order to have these meetings and make sure that you connected, you drove back and forth and met people face to face.
I'm super glad that you brought up Kobe, and obviously RIP. We lost a legend this year, him and his daughter Gianna, in a tragic accident. But we spoke a little bit earlier in the quarantine, and you told us that, Kobe was a great basketball player. He wasn't the greatest high school athlete that you ever saw, though. But there was something different about him. And it was really his foundation that really made him stand out as opposed to some of the other athletes who you've watched. Could you maybe explain to now the parents out there, what that foundation was, what it looked like, and what made you see something different in Kobe Bean Bryant as opposed to these other athletes?
glad you brought that up. Listen out there, parents and coaches. A kid has to have a certain DNA. You have to know that a kid is willing to listen. I think a lot of kids don't make it because they just don't listen. In Kobe Bryant's situation, he had a mother and a father that he was extremely loyal to and loved. And I watched them in the different events. Now, back then, guys, there might have been 2 or 3 live events. Live events meaning that when college coaches can come. But most of the tournaments we played in was during the dead period when coaches could not come. Although Kobe's dad, Joe, was a college coach at LaSalle, because his son was playing, the rules allowed him obviously to go see his son play. I watched it. I watched how he was with his dad and his mom. And I felt that if Kobe was going to make it, or if any person like that was going to make it, he had to have people that had his back. And I knew his mom and dad would have his back. Where conversely, Lenny Cook, for example, my concern with Lenny Cook was that his foundation wasn't as strong. Your foundation has to be right, okay, in order to make it. People don't understand that we can line up a kid from here to Georgia and only one of them will make it to the NBA. And people don't understand that things have to go right. How many times have we said, whatever happened to so-and-so, whatever happened to so-and-so? So through all of that with Kobe and the fact that his dad played in the NBA and they played in the overseas, I just felt that he had the total package, that was going to be needed to survive all the haters. And again, understand what I'm saying. It had not been done. So when we announced that it was going to be Kobe with Adidas, people went crazy. There was a lot of haters out there. A lot of haters. Okay? But I'm going to say this to y'all. Don't allow the haters to dictate your dream. If you believe in something, you keep pushing.
Right.
Haters are going to hate. That's their job. Use it as motivation to realize your dream.
Can I ask you, that leads me to our next question, because it seems as though you are very solid in what you know, what you understand. And you were very successful in multiple fields. The question for me would be, how would you characterize yourself? What intrinsically is a part of you that has led you to the level of success that you had in these multiple areas? Because it's a lot of foresight. There's a lot of stuff that you have to see moving before it happens. And sometimes we all lack that. So how would you characterize how your approach to these things that you're getting into? Because you got computers and then you got what you've established in the basketball world. These things are seemingly wide.
I was born in Haiti. And when I was 4 years old, my father left Haiti to come to New York with his mom. His mom had been here to make a better life for us. I didn't see my dad for 3 years. There were times we went through some hard times, but at the end of the day, that man brought all 4 boys into America. First, he brought my mom, then he brought the 4 boys up into America. My dad is 6'4". My dad, especially back then, he looked like Muhammad Ali. My dad was sharp, okay? And knowing what I knew, he could have easily said, I'm not bringing y'all up here. He could have just went on. He didn't do that. My dad and my mother are my foundation. So that's number one. They've always told me or taught us right from wrong. My dad was a sharp dresser, 3-piece suit every day. So that's part of my foundation where I get my, where I dress. And the true story is
always sharp.
Okay, in 6th grade, my dad came to the school because there was a school meeting. And I watched the teachers like, who's that man? And just the way they were looking at him. And I said to myself, well, that's going to be me too. Okay, so that's how far back I've had that in my head. All right. I'm a glass half full guy. I've always been. I have always been confident in myself because I'm the oldest of the 4 brothers. So I've always needed to be on top to make sure that they were going to follow, for them not to do wrong. So that's always been me. So my foundation comes through all of that, in that I've always been self-assured of myself. There was never somewhere where I said, I'm in awe of. Even to this day, And again, it's not trying to brag, anything like that. I'm just telling you, it's just the way I've been built. My mom always told us that we could be whoever we want to be. And I watched my dad go to work and be that dude. Okay. And I'm saying, well, I mean, I could do it because that's the way I was raised. And so my foundation comes from the fact that I feel that whatever I whatever situation I put myself in, I can make it happen. That's just how I'm built.
And you've done it. So I think, your foundation has set you up for success, for sure.
And let me just say this before Divine goes. Divine always makes a comment about how sharp you are. He always makes a comment about how sharp you are. He's always said, look at Gary. He got a tie on or got whatever. He said Gary could be anywhere, but he's gonna be sharp anywhere he's at.
Again, like I said, is something that I learned from my dad. And I went to college, guys. Well, listen, I was doing this in high school. My hat, my suit, the whole bit. And this is a true story, which gets lost on time. I had transferred from Roosevelt to W. Tresper Clark in Westbury. So they weren't taking too kindly me coming in there wearing a hat. But I went and sat down with the assistant principal about what are we going to do about this, Gary? So we worked out a deal in that I would walk to the school by the door with my suits on, my hat. I would give him my hat. School would be over. He would be waiting for me at the door. He would give my hat back. Okay, I'll put it back on, get on the bus and go home. It's true. I went to college. I would suit every day with a hat, with a briefcase. And people would ask me, what are you doing? Why are you carrying a briefcase and wearing a suit every day? And I said, I'm preparing myself for success. Okay. And what ends up happening is that people want to make that money, but they don't want to do the things to get them there. All right. And they don't seem to get that. Understand that there's a process. Understand you better learn how to play that game. If you want to help people out, learn to play the game, get in the game, then you can go back out and reach for the next person. So when I did go work on Wall Street back then, I couldn't wear my hat because I understood. I now had to learn to play the game. And I learned to play the game, and what it did, it opened up other doors for other Black, because I understood that. I understood this wasn't about me. This was about us. Okay. And even to this day, I try not to forget that.
It's great that you talk about it's about us, because, a big part of what we do on the perspectives of Black men is talk about sponsorship. And, Aaron always alludes to the fact that I'm a sponsor for other people. And I've learned that from you. I've learned from you to dress for the job that I want, not the job that I have. So, I know I call you in like the most annoying fashion at times, but I'm an annoying personality, so it's fine, right? So, but I have the utmost respect for you because of your actions and how you go about doing your business. And so one of the other things that I noticed is because you have this, national respect with college athletics, basically, namely basketball, for the reason that you've been so involved with grassroots hoops for so long. Talk a little bit about the opportunities that you afforded young Black assistant coaches and head coaches to have a seat at the table in an interview process to get a Division I college coaching job, or any level for that matter.
Divine, I tell people this all the time. Real recognize real. Okay. And watching you from a young man, growing up, there was always something about you. It was your demeanor, the way you carried yourself. And I felt like, he's a good young man. And I'm real careful on who I attach myself with. Because remember this, guys, you could take 20 years to build a reputation and you can ruin it in one day, one mistake. And a lot of time what guys do is that they want to reinvent the wheel instead of just following the yellow brick road that's already been, created. Like I tell my guys all the time, follow the yellow brick road. Stop trying to get off the damn road, okay? That's the road that's paved. And So I've done that with coaches and with the college coaches around America. One thing they will always tell you about Gary Charles, that whether you like the answer or not, but you always gonna get a straight answer from me, period. So if I tell them that this person right there is gonna be a pretty good coach, they listen to my word and they give them an opportunity. But it wasn't just built on a day. You had to build that, reputation. Again, a foundation. Your foundation has to be solid. And what people have to understand that when Jay Wright was here at Hofstra, he was just getting going. Okay, Jay and I kind of grew up together. And Jay would recruit some of my guys, and of course he ended up getting some of my guys. And Jay Wright would tell you, Gary Charles played a major part while I'm in Villanova. Or other coaches will tell you the same thing. It wasn't because I was trying to get anything out of it, it's just that I saw something in them, okay, that I knew that they would be a solid person. And that's always been my attitude. And I also know that if I recommend the wrong person, it's gonna hurt a whole lot of people. And that's why I've had to tell guys at times, wait, it's not your time yet. Because everyone wants to become a head coach, but they're not always prepared to be a head coach. So all you're doing is messing up for the next person that could become that person. So I tell guys like, look, sometimes you don't have to talk. Just watch, what's going on. You learn a lot sometimes just keeping your mouth shut, observing, okay? Stop talking so much and eventually it will come. Don't think it's gonna come in 5 seconds. Learn your craft. So that way you could be in there for the long haul. Like I've had questions, people have said, how did you end up getting so many pros? And I would tell people this. I would tell my kids, remember this. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. You don't want to just go to the pro. You want to be able to stay in the pro. Okay? So I have a famous story, and a couple more. I have a whole lot, but Charlie Villanueva was about to come out of high school. Okay? And now understand, let me just say that Charlie played 12 years in the NBA. But he was coming out of high school. But I didn't think he was ready. But he needed to see it. So he takes all these visits. And now the last one is at New Jersey Nets. Byron Scott was the coach then. And he's killing Charlie. Now Charlie is coughing and puffing and everything. And he said, he comes over to me. He said, so what do you think? I said, well, Charlie, listen, we have a guarantee for you. What's the guarantee? I'm guaranteeing that, I think at number 28, the Dallas Maverick could take you, that, or it could be the Spurs. He said, man, 28, 29? I said, yeah. What do you think? I think you should go to college. Okay, I think you should go to college because it's not just going, you want to stay. So he says, okay, what are we going to do? I said, gonna go to UConn. Makes sense. All right, so I should do a year in UConn? No, man, you're gonna have to do 2 years. And he said, 2 years. So I can leave right now, right to the NBA, make money. But if I go to college, I gotta do 2 years? Why do I have 2 years? And I said it again, because it's not about getting the NBA, it's about staying in the NBA. Those 2 years are gonna prepare you for the long haul. 12 years. And he listened. He said, Coach, let's go. What do we do? Because that day was the last day you had to pull your name out. He said, well, what are we gonna do? We gotta get the papers in. And I reached in my suit. I'm like, just happen to have your papers right here. Sign it right here at the bottom of the line. All right. Byron Scott laughed and he said, we gotta get it to the NBA. I said, yep. I said, Byron, can we use your fax machine over there? And we faxed it in. It's a true story. Okay.
So Omar Cook, had a great year at St. John's his freshman year, right? And then I think he tried to come out and go pro, and I don't think he was ready yet.
Well, again, he wasn't, by the way. Now, I'm going to tell you the story for the first time. I don't think I've ever said this to anyone. Just remember, I don't care what level, what field you're in, politics play a role in it, okay? Who plays part in all of this. I did get a call about Omar Cook. I was asked, Gary, we down to the last 2 spots. Who should we take? Omar Cook or Kenny Satterfield? Who do we keep? And they said, I said to them, keep Kenny Satterfield. And I was asked why. I said, because he played for me. Always remember, a tie goes to family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm just being as real as possible, fellas.
There's so much game within the 34 minutes of this podcast. I really, really, really hope everyone listening right now has a notepad, is listening with intention, because there is a lot of free game that is being given so far. I just want to clarify a few things. Like we know basketball. So when you talk about Lenny Cook, just giving that example for people, Lenny Cook was ranked ahead of LeBron James in high school. So for those people who don't know basketball, I just want to give a little context to like who he was. And you're hearing the name. Nothing ever became of him, unfortunately. Like he was the number one prospect ahead of LeBron James in high school. And we all know who LeBron James is. Not many people know who Lenny Cook is right now, unless you're like into basketball like us. So I just wanted to give a little context onto that. Before we go into the 35-second shot clock, I also wanted to just go over not just dressing for the opportunity in the position that you're in now, but looking to dress and be prepared for the next opportunity. That is so important for young Black men and Black women to know and understand. It is a real thing to be wearing 3-piece suits in high school. I know it wasn't easy. Like that's not something that's looked at as quote unquote cool in that time. So to have the foresight, like Dr. Johnson mentioned earlier, to know like this is not just where I am right now, but this is preparing me for where I want to be. That is huge game. So I just wanted to really make sure that everyone's listening, because we have more game coming to you guys in the next 30 minutes.
And can I just say before we move on, what's important to underscore in that point that Dr. Scantlebury just made is that at the end of the day, there are different opportunities for different people. However, when someone's watching you take the initiative to be different, to be you, right? Because it is not the most popular thing for young people today in high school to wear a 3-piece suit. So if somebody's watching you make a conscious decision to be different, to be you, and you're aiming for a specific end, they may look at you like, I like what that kid is doing. There's something about that kid, that young man, that young lady. I'm gonna have to pull them in here. Like just the sheer, what you're doing is gonna bring kind of a wanting to know you, right? It's gonna bring them to want to give you give you a conversation, have an opportunity waiting for you. So I think that's important, because there are certain areas that probably in different sectors where business casual or jeans or whatever is okay, whatever the culture of the organization. However, especially when in the era that you were coming up in, it was a little different in terms of what people expected in the workplace. So Gary Charles is looks like he's younger than me and Divine, but he came up before us. And that 3-piece suit thing was like, people will look at that and be like, yo, this guy is killing. Who is it? Who is this guy? So I just want to put that out there for you, Dr. Scantlebury.
He looks younger than you. No, he looks younger than you, not me.
Definitely younger than you, because you have the Deacon streak. I don't know if anybody else on this entire thing, like you got I don't know if we call that the Storm. Remember from X-Men? She had the white hair, or I don't know what we're gonna call that. All I know is you have it. That's what you have. Now I don't have anything up there, so you can attack that.
Yo, he's fresh cut, man.
Fresh cut.
I think he's like 5 years younger right now.
Very clean. No, I'm not hating. I'm just saying you just are older than everyone that we come across.
We're gonna get you the Gary Charles hat and see how young you look. All right. So Gary, this next section is our 35-second shot clock section, right? So we have 35 seconds on the clock. I'm going to run through a bunch of different questions. I just want you to quickly spitball answers off of the top of your head for me, okay?
All right.
Do we have a timer?
I got it. Don't worry about it.
You doing? Okay. All right. Perfect.
In 3.
Hold on. Let me pull it up. Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay. MJ or LeBron?
LeBron,
Favorite female athlete of all time?
Candace Parker,
Most influential person in your life?
Sonny Vaccaro,
Most talented player you've ever coached?
Lamar Odom,
If you were able to have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be with?
Barack Obama.
Name something most people don't know about you.
I love mob movies.
Proudest moment in your life.
Watching my kids graduate.
When the quarantine is over, where is the first place you're traveling?
Philadelphia, getting shake up.
That was a bomb. Sorry.
That last answer was Philadelphia for what?
To get a cheesesteak hoagie.
Okay.
Cheesesteak.
That's a fact. I love a Philly cheesesteak hoagie, man.
We know you do, Divine.
I haven't had a cheesesteak hoagie in like 15 years.
I mean, that sounds good right
And you
now.
won't be having one anytime soon either, brother.
And you know, like I said, I went to college at Cheney State in Philadelphia. So
You know how they get down.
yeah, Philly cheesesteak was a staple, for me back then. So I missed that.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit, right? Where the topic is equity in sports. And
Right.
Gary, you just recently started a new endeavor in ABIS. So could you please just explain to the people listening what ABIS is and what is the actual mission of the company?
ABIS stands for Advancements of Blacks in Sports. So our mission is for people to understand their voice in that realm. Okay, so we want to be that voice for racial equity in sports. That's the idea, and including students and other athletes, and understand that collectively we have a major voice. We need to understand that we possess the oil. The oil meaning the players, the Black players. So why do we allow people just to come in and just take that oil? We need to change our narrative. We need to control ours. But there's always people out there talking for us. When are we going to start talking ourselves for it? And the reason that it started was that I watched the George Floyd situation. I really felt that I was watching lynching. Okay, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what lynching is all about. And I was actually, I believe, with you guys on a Zoom call. When I started thinking about it, and right after it, I did a video that went viral. And in that video, I said to the white people, I understand right now you're uncomfortable with the protests we're doing, but understand that Blacks wake up every day being uncomfortable in this country. I understand that the buildings are bombing you, the buildings being burned, and no one is saying that should happen. But I just wish your ancestors felt the same way when they burned down a whole town of Black Wall Street and Rosewood in Florida. I wish they felt the same way when they burned down these towns. Then I asked the white coaches, I said, white coaches, your silence is coming out extremely loud, okay, because they weren't saying anything. But then I asked the Black coaches, what are we going to do about it? How do we feel about HBCU schools? We can make changes. And after that, I reached out to some of them, Coach Leonard Hamilton, Florida State, Dave Lato at DePaul, and then I connected them with the top grassroots coaches around America, and we held a Zoom call. We started talking about some of this. How can we help each other? What do we need to do? A lot of yelling, a lot of cursing, but at the end of the day, we understood we needed to come together. Then I asked Coach Hamilton, reach out to Coach Vivian Stringer of Rutgers on the women's side. I asked Dave Lato, I need you to reach out to Dawn Staley from South Carolina. He did. We brought the women in, and Coach Stringer asked me to reach out to a woman named Felicia Hall Allen. Felicia Hall Allen was the best call I made because then she brought in 30 other women coaches from around the country. Then I said to everyone, we can't call ourselves Advancements of Blacks in Sports without getting the other sports in. So we brought in baseball. And in baseball now, Willie Randolph is part of the organization. Gary Sheffield is part of the organization. And we have a gentleman by the name of Bo Porter, who used to be the manager for the Houston Astros and is currently a Major League Baseball analyst. He runs that division, so he's the president for that. Then we brought in football. A gentleman by the name of Guy Troop. Will Shield just committed, who's a Kansas City Chief Hall of Famer. We brought in track and field. Currently, the head coach of Florida, who's going to be our next Olympian coach, his name is Mike Holloway. He's the head of that division of track and field. We brought in gymnastics. Okay. Recently, we brought in fencing. I didn't know Blacks fenced. Okay. Now they're in. So we keep coming up with other things because people are calling us and saying, we need to be part of this. And let me just say this, on the board of directors include civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who is currently handling the George Floyd situation, and Jacob Blake, and other people. Chuck D from Public Enemy is on the board. Tracy McGrady is on the board. Michael Hausfeld, for those of you who don't know who he is the attorney that won the NIL case, name, images, of likeness, against the NCAA for Ed O'Bannon. That opened up the door for that. He's on the board. Robin Roberts from Good Morning America, she's an ambassador. Okay. LaChina Robinson from ESPN, she's involved. So it is amazing that the amount of people that's involved. And there's going to be other names that I just don't want to say right now who we've been talking to who want to become part of ABIS. Because you know what it is, guys? I think we all know it's time. I think at this point, we're just sick and tired of being sick and tired. Okay? That's kind of like, where we at. And there's strength in numbers. And that's a quote from Mike Anderson, the head coach of St. John, who's involved. He said, Gary, strength in numbers. And that's what we're doing. No one needs to know who is saying it, but you know what? But for ABIS, we're going to be the voice for racial equity in sports.
And I'm glad you said that. It leads me to my question. What tangibles are you looking for in the short run and also in the long run?
So let me give you an example. One of the things that we found out, we want to increase procurement and supply demand in college sports. And I'll give you guys an example. We found out that with 20 vendors that the NCAA hired for the NCAA event, not one of them was Black. Not one of them. In the Power Five, 65 to 75% of players are Black.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to disrespect us, but not even hiring not one person for Mama Soul Food or anything like that?
And what's the revenue? And what's the revenue with all these athletes generate on that level?
Listen, let me say this to you. On the football side, with the vendorship that the NCAA gave contracts to, it was a total of $18 million.
Jesus. Wow.
They gave $2,000 to the Blacks.
Unbelievable.
Said
I want you to think about that for a second. Okay? So we have already met with the Black Caucus on that. The Black Caucus went shocked because sometimes we just don't know. We don't know what we don't know. Okay? So we created a division called Racial Equity Research. And we have Dr. Stroman from North Carolina, Dr. Lori Martin from LSU. Dr. Richard Lapchick is probably the most well-known educator because every year he comes out with a report card and gives it out to the NCAA sports. A white man. He's on the group. He is so well-known, and just so a point of reference, guys, he was one of the best friends of Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor at the time. He was coming out the library. Two white men came with a mask on to beat him up and wrote the N-word across his chest. That's who Dr. Richard Lapchick is. But so back to what I'm saying is that, so that's one of the things that we've been talking to the Black Caucus about. That's one initiative. Another initiative is African-American history should be taught across the country because African-American history is American history. It's not just African.
I have someone who can teach it, Dr. Johnson.
Okay, well, that's one of the things that we're working on to be taught across the country. Okay, so the removal of the SAT, ACT, because we have learned that is not indicative of our Black education. Stop using that as a tool for our Black kids not to be able to go to school. Okay, so that's another one that we've taken up. Internship for young men after they graduate, sports young men, because you know what? They think all they can be is a pro. Not so. So let's create internships so when they graduate, they can come back, learn how to become an AD, learn how to become an administrator, learn how to become that person that when you're interviewing someone that looks like us, because that's another reason why enough Black coaches don't get jobs, because the person that's interviewing them don't look like we do. We need to change that. So that's another thing that we're doing. So there's different initiatives like that we're working on, and our subcommittee, consists of people of who's who across the sports, galaxy. And it's been awesome. And the first thing I said, guys, in the email that I sent to everyone, all these coaches, because understand the coaches I've just said to you all, I'm named so far. And I said, every single person is a king and a queen. I get that. But I'm going to ask you one thing. Leave your egos at the door.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about you. It's about us. Let's make this thing happen. And guys, it's been unreal how everyone has jumped on board and said, let's go, Gary. Let's get on the Soul Train.
So let me just ask you a question then. So you guys, you go in, you take the initiative and you start ABIS. What's the end game? Like, what do you see if you look into the future? Like, where do you see it going and to what level and what extent?
First of all, I think the most important thing that we're doing is educating the student athletes. So as of right now, I think we have 50 members of the student athletes or college athletes. I remember one guy said to me, don't call us student athletes. That's just a word that the NCAA made up. Okay, just call us college athletes. I love that because NCAA has done a terrific job in programming people to believe, yeah, they really are student athletes. Where really all they're doing is making money off these kids. So one of the things is to educate these kids to make them understand that the power that they have, how they come together. Now, let me tell you one of my proudest moments in the last couple of months. So we're talking to these students athletes who come across UCLA, Stanford, Princeton, Duke University, UConn, everywhere else. And we're asking them, why do you want to be part of ABIS? And we get to a young lady. The young lady is white. Her name is Paige Bucher. She is the #1 women basketball player in the country that I'm told, okay? And she says, I want to be part of ABIS because my younger brother is Black. And I want him to have the same rights as I do as a white person. So I am here to educate myself to be able to go back and explain it to my white friends why this is so important. That tells me we're going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So powerful.
Okay?
Very powerful.
That's what that tells me. And at the end of the day, when you set an end game, we want to be the NAACP for sports. We want people to recognize just who we are. We want people to recognize who the hidden figures are, okay? So there's a lot of things we're gonna do. We wanna create a gala, all right? So that all the people who have been forgotten as Blacks, we bring them up, say, come and get your award. These are all the things that we're looking to do in the future, okay? We wanna write our own narrative to understand that we are just as good as you. We are human beings too. We're not asking to take over the world. We just asking for a seat at the table just like you have.
It's funny that you said we want to be the NAACP of the sports world, because I was thinking, I was going to ask that question. Are you going to be like the NAACP of the? And I was going to say, and would you? Because you then could leverage your power. But also the difference between the NAACP and yourself, your group ABIS would be that you guys are founded by Black people. Your foundation is Black, and it's the identity is Black, and it's unapologetically so. And so you get a chance to wield the organization in a way that you are going to wield it for the greater good of progress and equity. Whereas you don't have to sell out, you don't have to half step, because the NAACP was founded by mostly white and Jewish people. And then it took them forever to promote a Black person to the level of president in that organization. And a lot of times people don't know that it was founded by whites and Blacks together, but for the most part had a white stranglehold over the organization.
That is a profound statement, because everything you said is actually correct. I'm not sure how you started hanging with Divine, all right? Because that's very sharp on what you just said, because like you said, this is unapologetic. And it's funny, when we were trying to come up with a name, and a couple of people said, well, Gad, you really think we should put Black in it? And I said, whoa. We've been waiting 300 to 400 years for this.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to sell out for whatever they want us to be. Black, we're going to use it. We're being intentional, with that, okay, period. I'm proud of who I am. We all need to be proud of who we are. We wield power, and we need to put it together to understand just exactly who we are, point blank. So you are absolutely correct. It's
And
done on purpose.
what's interesting about that too, I'm just thinking about first of all, the intersectionality of everything that you've put your hands in. So now that I'm looking at this organization, it's like the vision that you have to have, because now I'm thinking into 30, 40 years into the future. If the majority of Black coaches and Black players identify with this organization from the vision and the mission about bringing equity to sports, that they dominate themselves, the power that is in that organization is almost, I don't want to say unlimited, but it can't be bridled. It can't be saddled when you have the people who actually dominate these sports are a part of this organization that's saying, we want this, and this is how we want it. How are we going to negotiate?
There it is.
What can somebody say?
What could they say? Coach Leonard Hamilton, who is kind of like the OG in the Black basketball world, right? He's been around forever. He said to me, his words, "Woo, you on to something, man. You on to something." Because he said, your dream is a lot higher than what my dream was. And as I've said to people, if your dream doesn't scare you, then you don't need to be here, okay? Because we need to understand together, as you just said, we could accomplish whatever we want.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, guys, think about it. We really do possess the goal. Whatever sports that we decide to put our minds into, we make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it that we allow them to dictate to us what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a amazing thing to me that I don't know if I can ever understand. But my mind has always been different. I remember you said something earlier about how was it to be wearing a 3-piece suit, knowing that people thought you were different. People might look at you, differently. A couple of things on that. One is I play sports. So when you play sports, you're considered like the cool guy. Growing up, because I was from Long Island, I was a star basketball player. I was an all-star baseball player. I was a wide receiver in football. I bowled. So I did it all. So when you're an athlete, as you know, you looked upon differently in a positive way. So he was this athlete who was getting dressed like that. And here's the other thing. I never looked at it that I was the weird one. I looked at everybody else as being the weird one and not understanding what it was going to take for us to be successful. So that never occurred to me that I was the outlier. Never. And friends would tell you now to this day, like, yeah, look at Charles, never thought that he was, low in there and so and so. I just never, it wasn't in my DNA. Does that make sense? Like that was never a thought that came across my mind. I knew I was heading places and no one was going to stop me. That was my goal. I tell my daughters this, so I'm going to say this to the young people, remember this. I used to tell them, be careful of the man that you choose. Because if you choose the wrong man, it's going to affect you for the next 50 years of your life. Pick the right partner. And too many people settle. You don't need to settle. You don't need to make an excuse. It's your life, okay? Don't allow somebody else to dictate how your life is going to be, okay? Because you don't want to be miserable for the rest of your life. Very important.
Mm-hmm. A lot of game out there. Gary, we also want to bring to the forefront a little bit before we wrap up on police brutality. We know we had a player of yours who unfortunately suffered to the hands of police brutality in Freeport. Just give us a little bit of insight maybe to the incident. Don't have to go too much into detail, but give us, just talk to us about, and I also would like to bring up your experience as a young man, 26-year-old, having a nice car and driving through nice neighborhoods and being, stopped by the police. I just want to, from a successful Black man, understanding still the struggle of having to deal with police interaction.
The former player's name is Akbar Rogers. We call him Ace. And he was being chased in Freeport. And they caught him. And they beat him up bad. And again, I was sitting there thinking at the time, my God, why do they look at us like we're animals? Why do they look at us like we're, you know what? I'm not even gonna say dogs because they treat dogs better than they treat us. Michael Vick went to jail a couple of years ago for what he did to dogs. Okay, and we looked upon even less. What did we do to these people for them to be treating us like that? Why did it get to this point? Let me just say this, and I don't even know how people are going to take this, but you know what? I want to keep your show real. And let me just say this to y'all. I love my black people, okay? But I hate niggas, okay? And what I'm saying is, stop thinking that we're all that, because there's a whole lot of white people I can call that, okay? That word, that N word, does not define who we are. That's not us. Stop thinking we all like that. You know, I watch when people have saying that we all live in some, bad neighborhoods and like that. That's not the way I grew up. That's not what are you talking about? Okay? Why do you treat us the way you continue to treat us? And part of the reason is, guys, is because of the history that wasn't taught to them. They need to understand our history. I've told people, I was 15 years old when I found out that Elizabeth Taylor was not Cleopatra. And the point I'm making is that she's the one that portrayed Cleopatra on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? We have to change the narrative. We need to continue to educate people. They need to understand just how important we were to this country too, okay? Because you keep talking about go back home. Well, you go back home. We all came from somewhere else. The only people who have the right to say they're from here are the Indians.
And they came from somewhere else 12,000 years ago. So
exactly. So stop it already.
Mm-hmm.
Stop. So now that hurt me extremely, deep. That cuts deep, and it just shows me the amount of work that we still need, to get done in America. And that's the reason why APIS is needed, and why everyone should be joining that, because we have to keep pushing and we have to continue to keep educating. You see, won't say it. Okay, I'm gonna tell you something. I was in Manhattan one day, and I get down to the subway, and it was a white family, and you could tell they were tourists, and they're looking around at the mom, the dad, his two kids, the white son, the white young lady, and a black guy was coming, but you could tell he was a thug. And now he started to walk toward them. And you know what I did? I walked over toward them and just started talking like I knew him. And the guy went the other way. And I said to them, you know what? Color should have nothing to do with doing the right thing. Period. And that's what I would say to people out there. Okay? Color should have nothing to do in doing the right thing. And understand, whoever you are, black or white or whatever, you upset just like they are when a black person is doing wrong. Same way we look at it, you upset if a white person is doing wrong. That's how most of us are really built. And for whatever reason, they don't seem to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
As far as my experience, you're right. I believe, I don't know why you use the age 26, but at 26 years old, I was driving a Porsche, at the time. I'm working on Wall Street. So I'm like, I'm that dude, if you know what I mean, okay? I'm young, and I get stopped. I get stopped by the cops, and I'm like, officer, what are you stopping me for? Oh, you're going over the speed limit. Ooh, I see 10 cars going by. I said, wow. And I said, this is wrong. What you doing? He gave me the ticket because he couldn't find anything on me. Because you know what? 26-year-old black person was not supposed to be driving a Porsche unless they were selling drugs. And I remember I took off a day from work, and I went to court right over here in Hempstead to the courthouse. And the lawyers try to do a deal with me because, before you see a judge, they try to cut a deal with you. Well, pay us a little less. I said, no, I want to see the judge. So the judge, and I'm there with my suit on the whole bit, and he said, young man, why are you here for? I said, Your Honor, the officer gave me a ticket because I'm a young black man driving a Porsche. He looked me up and down, and he said, case dismissed. And I walked out. And 3 times I did the same thing. In fact, I got to the point where one time in Roosevelt, I said to one of the officers, I said, officer, now that you know what my name is, now that you know I'm legit, do me a favor and tell the rest of these white officers in Roosevelt who Gary Charles is so they can stop trying to stop me, okay? Those are the things that we go through our whole life. And it's a pathetic shame.
It is. I just wanted to highlight that story because even though you're a successful young man doing the right thing, portraying the right image to the right people, sponsoring your community, putting on for your community, providing opportunities for your community, you can still be looked at as just another nigga, to be honest. And that's not what we want. And that's not what we're about. And the whole point of the perspectives of Black men is to change that view. That was why we started this show. And that again happened out of George Floyd as well. So that moment was a huge awakening for all of us on this program today, for us to start this podcast, for you to start ABIS. Like, that unfortunate incident is going to hopefully produce so much positivity in this world moving forward that hopefully we never, ever, ever, ever have to watch another incident like that or have to be exposed to another incident like that. So again, just from knowing you and hearing your story, and these are just some of the things that I wanted to make sure that you shared with the people, because this is our life. This is our perspective. And we have to let people understand and know these things, because they think they understand, but hearing these stories, like you, unless you're Black, you'll never understand what it is to live as a Black man in America. So sharing these stories helps provide some insights for those people who are not Black to understand what we go through and why we're so passionate about this moment in history right now. So really appreciate that.
And can I just say on top of that, isn't it peculiar that we are judged or characterized by the worst elements in our community? Whereas, and this is an element of white supremacist ideology, right? Here it is that white people in America have a history of rape, torture, murder, theft, and enslavement for centuries. But we are characterized by the worst elements in our community that they, in fact, created, right? The hoods were created, redlined. The hoods were created by the United States government. The drugs were brought in from the United States government. The guns were, we don't have gun manufacturers in our community. So it's interesting how you create a narrative around a community's viruses that you've created, and then characterize everybody in that community by the worst elements that you also created. And then we have to fight this fight continually, the people who are trying to do, be stand up or be professional or whatever word you want to put in there. And it's just interesting that is the problem. One of the things that Mr. Charles said earlier is that they don't know their own history. And yes, Black people need to be strong. I make sure my students, I say, y'all need to be understanding of our history so that you are very versed in having a real conversation about who we are here.
Exactly.
In an unapologetic way. I said, but also white people need to really understand their history. And I just did I'll just say this real quick. I just did a training for the Suffolk County Human Rights Commission at a fire. It was a fire department, the fire department that kind of brandished the Confederate flags in August. And so I did a training, and I said, we could live a lot more harmoniously if we weren't so ignorant. And I said, I mean that in the most respectful of ways, not in a pejorative way, but in the most literal of ways. We lack knowledge in such a great and a grand way that we really don't know what we don't know. And then it's fueled by hate and generational conditioning. So I just thought I wanted to underscore what you said, Kellen, and also what Mr. Charles said about this thing. We have a lot of work to do in America. And if we're interested in being on the side of righteousness, then white folks are going to have to really educate themselves a lot fuller than they have been, because they have one perspective that they live by.
Mm-hmm. And if they can educate themselves right here on this platform, you can subscribe to the Perspectives of Black Men. You can like this video. You can leave a comment below. You can join and want to be a part of ABIS. We are literally gift wrapping the tools for you to be a part of the change and do something to be on the right side of history. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to put actions behind it. And we're literally gifting you guys this opportunity. So subscribe to the YouTube page, like the video, comment on the video, reach out to AB. Gary, please tell the people where they can find more information about ABIS, please.
Please go onto our website, weareabis.org. Again, weareabis.org.
And we will also make sure that we put that into the YouTube links as well. So anyone who's interested can just easily click on that button below and get the information that they're looking for. The information is here, everyone. If you search for it, you will find it. Don't just be willfully ignorant. If you want to change and change the way you think to help change the way that your family thinks, the information is out there. Just go search for it. So on that topic, we're going to move to the next segment, which is On the Shelf with Dr. J. And again, this is more information that we're literally gifting you, game that we're gifting you to become a better person, not just for yourself, but for this whole community that we're looking to bring up. So Dr. J, please just talk to us about your selection for tonight.
Well, today, I don't have the book in front of me. It's actually in one of my, because I have a large kind of like library, a lot of books that I've collected over the years, and as well as for my dissertation. However, I do have the title and I can break it down, and it's really connected to what's going on right now in the courts. So Faces at the Bottom of the Well by Dr. Derek Bell. Faces at the Bottom of the Well by Dr. Derek Bell, who is the father of the critical race theory. The critical race theory is a really, really important theory and by the way, Dr. Derek Bell was one of Barack Obama's professors at Harvard. And he came up with this theory that America is pretty much immersed in racism in all facets of society. And that when we're looking at Black people in the criminal justice system, we need to make sure that we're looking through that lens of that we're in a society saturated by racism in order to do well by them, in the justice system. And Faces at the Bottom of the Well kind of speaks to a lot of his ideas about Black people in our society, or Blacks in legal in the criminal justice system. So I would say that one right there. And there's another book by Derek Bell that I wanted to talk about. And I can't, the title just kind of skipped my brain, but Faces at the Bottom of the Well. I read it a couple of times. It won't be a waste of your time if you're interested in really just understanding our place here, right? I think, and we are not saved. I think that's the other one. And we are not saved by Dr. Derek Bell. It's just these ideas that even though people believe that we have gotten to a certain point in society, racially, even though we've had, and I'll just add this in, even though we've had a Black president, it doesn't mean that our journey is over. It doesn't mean that the hundreds of years of racism and just pure institutional inequity is over. We have such a fight to bring equity to our people. And we have to rid ourselves of the word equality when we're talking about us. Everybody else can talk about that. We can't have equality until we have equity. Right? Until you pour so much into our community that we can catch up, and then we can start running the same race. But it's going to take us 236 years in order for us to catch up to white wealth without real action in our community, institutionally. So Faces at the Bottom of the Well, one of my favorites, and Dr. Derek Bell, one of my favorites. Critical race theory. Think about, and that was another one. There are a lot of different articles about the critical CRT, critical race theory.
Appreciate it. We'll also drop that link in our YouTube on the bottom in the comments section to make that very easy for anyone to find and locate. Again, that was On the Shelf with Dr. J. Gary, it's been absolutely a pleasure having you on. I just want to give you the final floor before we close to speak to our listeners, our viewers out there. Just closing messages from Gary Charles.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Understand this. Don't assume that your kids know what they don't know. One of the biggest things that I've learned is that we have to continue to educate them. The reason that white America has been able to get as far as they have gotten is because the message gets passed on from generation to generation to them. As Black people, we need to start doing a better job in passing the right message to our kids so they could continue to propel themselves, to that next level. And that's the one thing that, like I said, I learned from my dad, was that he had continued to educate me and point me in the right direction. And I'm trying to do the same thing to my kids or even the student athletes that I come across. And I think that's the thing that as people, we need to go ahead and continue to do so we can get there too.
Powerful message. Again, game after game after game, knowledge bombs were dropped tonight. Anyone listening out there, again, please, please, please make sure you subscribe to this YouTube page. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you drop a comment. It's just so much to even, I'll try to recap, but there was just so much game out there. Number one, know who you are. Gary knew who he was at a young age and was not afraid to be who he was. Young people out there, don't be afraid. If someone makes fun of you, if someone doesn't like your picture on Instagram, if someone leaves a bad comment, so what? Live your life, live your truth. Don't live your life for other people. Go out there and achieve. That's number one. Number two, don't be just satisfied with where you are right now. Understand that there's a place that you need to go. You can't just be thinking about the right now, but also be thinking about the future. So prepare yourselves for those opportunities. You can start preparing yourself right now. So that's number two. Number three, again, equity. We talk about being sponsors, right? I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to challenge Dr. Johnson. I'm going to challenge Divine. I'm going to challenge Gary Charles to be sponsors for other Black men and Black women, to bring about their names in rooms that they can't get into right now. We've already been doing it, but we want to continue and consistently do that so that we can provide opportunities and equity in our community. Everything is about equity. We need to have a seat at the table. Without a seat at the table, nothing will change. Until we have that seat and we can talk about that equity, then we can start getting things to work in our favor more often than not. Lastly, and maybe most importantly, is, again, interactions with the police. We've all unfortunately had to have probably more interaction than we would like with the police. Listening to Gary's story, he handled himself like a true gentleman. He could have went off at the lip. He could have said, "This is the fourth time you pull me over. I got a Porsche." He did not do that. He handled himself like a gentleman. He went to the court. He spoke to the judge. He got his case and his ticket dismissed. Just please be respectful, right? That's the biggest thing. In high pressure situations, especially now, you just don't know how things can turn left. And as a Black man, all it takes is one mistake in our life and it can change the trajectory of our life. Let's not give people the satisfaction of making that mistake, right? So a lot of game given today. I want to also leave some time for my co-host to also just give their last and parting messages before we dip out of here.
So I'll say, I know that you're one of the top 100 influential people in the nation, in this country. But more importantly to me, you're one of the top influential people in my life. And you created an opportunity for me that I didn't know existed before I met you. So I'm appreciative for those opportunities. And there's no time limit. Like, we usually try to keep the show to an hour. There's no time limit when we have someone on here like you, who is a sponsor in your community, who has made great decisions with your life to be an example for your family, for your children, for the young people who you've interacted with. So I'm truly appreciative for you and what you mean to me. And I love you.
Love you too, man. I appreciate that. As I said, real recognize real, and I recognize the real in you a long time ago. So, and you show it to me every single day. So thank you, for saying those words, and appreciate you guys having me on the show.
And I would just say, I appreciate you being on the show. A lot of jewels were dropped today, and I think a lot of times we take for granted the wisdom that we do have already in our communities. I just want to say to the folks out there, just recognize that being unapologetic is not a bad thing.
Right.
Knowing who you are and then going after what you want, especially in the realm of righteousness, right? I always tell people there's no middle ground to goodness. There's no gray area to righteousness. You're either going to be on the side of righteousness or you're not. And fighting this fight right now in 2020 has been a dumpster fire, trash bin, but it also has been an opportunity for us to really come into our awakening for some of us who have been asleep. And it has shined a light on some of the areas of our lives where we really kind of allowed to be in the dark. And this is the moment where you get a chance to come on here and get some jewels and kind of start to reorient readjust your perspective or your lenses. So that's all I wanted to say. I want to say that I appreciated all those jewels, because I'm thinking about right now, you know, how you had a vision and then you kind of created the mission, and then the work ethic will just kind of help it bring it to the forefront, and especially all the connections that you've made over the years. So people out there, don't be afraid to get, you know, to get to know people who are going in your same direction. Don't be afraid to you know, kind of talk to them and try to get the information and try to, you know, just listen. Like Gary said earlier, Mr. Charles said earlier in the conversation, sometimes you just got to be quiet. I remember when I took my first leadership class, and the professor was like, you know, and he was like very, very, he didn't care. He was like, when you get into a leadership position, sometimes you got to shut the F up and listen. Just shut your mouth and listen. Don't have an opinion. And you just got there and you already have an opinion. Be quiet. Try to put your finger on the pulse of the culture there, and listen, learn, get some game first before you start talking and trying to give your opinion. He said, F your opinion. And so that's one of the things that I know I always try to do, just fall back. A lot of times people try to defer to folks who they believe have a position or a title. Falling back and just listening becomes really, really important, so it can help you establish your vision.
Absolutely. Just remember, every action has a reaction. It's the way you react that's going to define who you are and who you become. You know, just remember that.
Again, thank you so much, Gary, for being on the show tonight. Really, really, really appreciate it. Everyone out there, again, please subscribe to the page, like the page, leave a comment below. Next week, we'll be wrapping up season 1 of The Perspectives of Black Men. This has been an amazing journey so far. We're super excited. We're just getting started. This is just the warm up. Again, Gary, thank you so much. Everyone listening out there, peace, love, and we'll see you guys next week.
Have a good night.
Peace.
Good night, guys.
Man.